difference between emails and letters, and it depends on the rhetorical situation that you're writing the emails or letters to, but this is just a general lecture to understand just the main overall differences between emails and letters. So let's talk about emails first and what they are. Emails are electronic digital only, and they are shared between more than one person. Of course, you can email yourself. Sometimes I email files to myself, but overall they're shared between, you need more than one person to have email correspondence. They can be within organizations or are shared outside. Most of the time, they're within the organization only. They overall are short and are conversation-based, meaning they indicate the sender to reply, but overall pretty short, not too lengthy. They are usually formal. Of course, it depends on the rhetorical situation, but for the purposes of this class and this lecture, they are formal usually because they're usually workplace-based only. You can't unsend emails, so checking for accuracy is important, making sure you're sending it to the correct person, to the exact email addresses, and also checking for spelling and grammar. Email logs, what those are, they are usually workplaces have email logs so that the organization can have them saved on file if they need them for future reference. So that's why you want to be careful what's in the email and be careful what you say. Receiving emails from outside your organization should always be reviewed. Don't click on links. Don't download files unless you know the sender. Sometimes, I know especially with schools and universities in general, a lot of outside email addresses won't even go to your inbox. They go to junk or the other files because if it's from outside the organization, it could be spam, so you have to be careful. But if you ever receive an email from outside your organization, always verify and make sure you know who it is or that it's a credible email address. Avoid abbreviations. I grew up in the instant messenger world where we always used to instant message each other, and we would use abbreviations, you know, LOL, BRB, TTYL, but that's okay because that met the genre conventions of instant messenger. They're allowed to be informal, but with emails, you want to avoid abbreviations. Using the design principle of emphasis is used sometimes in emails. Again, emphasis is using contrast, for example, that design principle. So right here I used emphasis for you to focus on that word. You don't want to overuse it. If I send you all an email and it's a reminder that something is due, I usually use contrast on the word due with the date, just so it stands out. Do not write in all uppercase, all caps, because it sounds like you're shouting. It makes the audience think you're shouting or yelling at them, so avoid all caps. Don't create silly email addresses because, you know, growing up, sometimes it's funny, but as an adult in a workplace situation, you don't want to use informal email addresses. Sometimes you have to attach files. If I told you to email me something, and you have to attach a file, first make sure your audience knows that something is attached. I usually say something attached, you will find this report. So make sure you remind them that something is attached. You know that something is attached in an email if you see the little paper clip in the email file. Also, when you mention that something is attached, before you send it, make sure you attach the file. I cannot stress how many times I've done that and felt so embarrassed where I say attached is something something, and then I press send and I realize I didn't attach the file. So it happens, mistakes happen, but to avoid embarrassment, before you even put the person's email address, I would recommend just making sure that the file is attached. Courtesy response. If somebody sends you an email and they need you to respond and they're waiting on you, but you need more time, whether to get back to the person with your schedule or if more time is needed to confirm what they are asking, instead of just disappearing and becoming a ghost in a way, send them a quick response that tells them to please allow you a little bit of time. Think about my syllabus even. I tell you all that Monday through Friday, allow up to 24 hours for me to respond to you. Just some kind of courtesy response. When you're writing an email, again, it just depends on the purpose. Purpose really structures what you need to include. But overall, make sure paragraphs and sentences are short. You don't need excessive detail in emails. You don't need narrative descriptions. You don't need dialogue. You need to keep it short and to the point, concise, which is what we're thinking about in this class in general. Type information in something called the subject line. On the next page, I'll show you what I mean by that. A subject line summarizes the email in a few words. Include salutations and closings. Opening salutations are words like dear, to, hello. That means to open the email, to start the email. And then sincerely, from, best, thank you, etc. are the closing remarks to let the audience know the email has ended. Consider your audience for tone. Again, overall, they're formal, but maybe if it's a friend, it's okay. If it's a former colleague of equal status and nobody else is really looking at the email, of course, you don't want to be informal in the language, but your tone could be a little less formal. Informal tone would be something like, hello, John, it's great to hear from you. It's welcoming, it's still polite, but it's a little informal. Hello, words, it's great. If you want to be more relaxed, this should be informative. That's a typo. Versus, quote, good afternoon, Mr. Garcia. I'm pleased to review your request. It means the same thing. I'm indicating that I'm happy to hear from them, but instead of saying it's great to hear from you, I'm saying I'm pleased to review what you are asking. And instead of word asking, I say request. And I'm using the word good afternoon and the formal title, Mr. So that's something to think about. It depends on your audience. That's why the rhetorical situation is so important. While emails anticipate responses, usually that's the point of them. If it is too back and forth, where you're emailing more than, I don't know, say 10 times in a row, consider a phone or video call, or if possible, an in-person meeting is more relevant. Do you need the person you're sending the email to respond quickly or to respond at all? Or are you just covering something that you needed to forward them? Clarify that. They may not know. So sometimes I'll ask you all, I believe I asked your class when school started if you could to respond to this email so that I get a peace of mind that you received the email. So if it's something like you need a peace of mind to make sure they received it, politely ask if they could possibly respond. That could be specified. If you do something called CCing somebody, that means you're also including somebody else's email. But the difference between adding their email next to the other person's address, there's a different line for CC. What that means is it's usually somebody higher up, a higher authority figure in the workplace who just needs to oversee the conversation. You're not anticipating their response. They're just overlooking the information being said. Check email addresses regularly, or check email addresses in general to make sure you're sending to the correct person, that it's the correct information. I tend to just copy and paste just to make sure it's correct. Check your inboxes regularly. Information can easily get overlooked if you have too many emails. I'm trying to get out of the habit of that as well for my Gmail. My Gmail has, I'm embarrassed to admit, about 300, so I need to clear that out. It happens to all of us. We can get over. We can all become digital hoarders. So check it regularly. Ethics note: be professional. Checks, even if you're talking to a friend in an email, because if it's in a workplace, if you're being obnoxious and offensive, somebody else can get a hold of that email. So even if you're talking to a friend, there's a way to be professional, but also be a little less formal in tone. Like I said here with, hello, John, it's great to hear from you. It's not offensive, but it's to somebody you're closer to. Check spelling, grammar, use formal titles if needed. Don't forward information unless the sender is aware. So if somebody's sending you private information and you forward it to your boss or to another colleague, make sure that person who sent you that information is okay with that as well. And don't continuously email somebody if they haven't responded. So you don't want to constantly emailing them throughout the day. Maybe if you haven't heard from them in a week, if you want to kind of send another email to gently nudge, see what's going on. But again, you don't want to overwhelm your audience. So those are emails overall. So let's talk about emails. This file has email sample. So I'm going to show you a sample of an email. I try to make it clear on this Word document just so you can visualize it a little bit better. Email design format, so that kind of technical computer, the technical information is up here at the top, right? So to that email, the email address of the person you're sending the email to, make sure the email address is correct. And I brought up that word CC. If you're sending it to 3 people and you need them all to respond, all 3 of their email addresses would go in too. But if an authority figure also needs to just overlook the conversation and they don't need to respond, that's where their email address would go in the CC. From is your email address. Usually don't have to type your own email address. It's already set. And then I mentioned something about a subject line. You don't want to skip a subject line. Subject lines are really important because sometimes if somebody's getting a lot of emails, they can overlook your email. And if they don't see that subject line, a lot of the times they don't click it because sometimes if it's spam or if an account is hacked, it doesn't have a subject line, and it just makes it more professional. So subject lines are really important because they catch the audience's attention when they're scanning their email folder. What is a subject line? It's just a few word summary of your email. What is the purpose of your email? Summarize it in a few words. If it's the end of the semester and I finish grading for your class, maybe your subject line would say something such as final grades completed, because that's me telling you, hey, we're done with grades. And then the emails are short. Usually everything is aligned to the left. So think about that design principle of alignment where you don't need to indent anything. You can keep it all to the left like I have here. You need an opening salutation first. Again, the dear, to, hello, etc. Be careful which word you use and think of who your audience is. And then a comma here to move on into the message. What is the main point of your email? Open with 1 to 2 sentences of the main idea. Don't go longer than 2 sentences. Just summarize the main idea. I could say, again, thinking about final grades. Final grades have been completed. Then the next paragraph, expand on the main point of this paragraph. Don't go over 5 sentences for that paragraph. It should be short again, but it's the background information to this sentence. So here I would maybe tell you all, maybe review what you completed in the course, how to check your final grades, and when and where I completed them, or when and where you can check for your final grades. Just a little more detailed information on the purpose of your email. And then you don't want to end there because it just kind of ends abruptly, so you still want to keep that authority going. So closing information in 1 to 2 sentences as well. Maybe last minute detail if it's an event, when and where, or something like that. Thanks for reading, reminders of deadlines, anything that the audience needs to remember at the very end. So again, if I'm thinking of final grades, I'd say something like, thank you so much for the semester. Some kind of closing remark. And then you need some kind of closing line, and that means adding the word sincerely, thank you, take care from. Again, be careful who your audience is. Then you add a few spaces here, and you include your full name.